So. Maybe we need a mental health break. Perchance, perchance.
Okay.
All right, so today we are going behind the scenes, literally behind the scenes, as we are still setting it up for our exhibit that opens tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, wow, tomorrow. This is Read This, the history of media in Northampton County.
Here it is.
I had this whole thing planned out, but now that I'm sitting in it, I'm just kind of vibing with it. So let's start with what is the big question, the overall question.
The big question is, well, it's the history of media in Northampton County, really kind of centered around the American Revolution. This is the start of our 2026 programming related to the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. So this is the beginning of our commemoration of that as part of a cooperative with other sites here in the Valley, including historic Bethlehem, Lafayette, and the Canal Museum, Lehigh Valley 250, as well as other partners as well. So the exhibit looks at what information and power and media looked like at the time of the American Revolution and draws comparisons to the more recent time. So the kind of information environment that led to the American Revolution and what that means for us now as we have information in our pockets. The way I've been talking about it, what's in the text, kind of the big idea I think about, it's that you don't get that late 18th century age of revolution, right? That of which the American Revolution is just one of, right? So the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the various revolutions that go through Spanish America, all of these other revolutions, the Haitian Revolution, right? You don't get all of these without the printing press. Right. We don't get them without like empire and kind of all that other stuff. You don't get them without the printing press, the spread of information, the spread of misinformation in these kind of global environments, right? And that printing press is popularized famously in Europe, right? With Johannes Gutenberg's popularization of the printing press in Europe. Things like the printing press existed other places in the world, like in China. But with the printing press, that leads to this explosion of information in the early modern period that leads to the Protestant Reformation in a really kind of solid way, like a solid line, printing press to Protestant Reformation. And then that leads to like essentially the wars of religion and these kind of questionings of monarchical structures that leads to the Age of Revolution, right? And our delightful audiences, and maybe you, are saying like, what does Gutenberg have to do with the American Revolution, right? But it's like that whole trajectory that starts with the printing press's origination in Europe, where all of a sudden there is this information explosion that leads to people questioning a monarch, right? And questioning an empire, right? When there wasn't this large availability of information, the king is the king because God said the king is king, right? So you're not going to question those structures of that. But when there's a plurality of information, then you do that. We are continuing to live in that trend, that swing, right? Like in that age of revolution, right? Because we had the printing press, and maybe the printing press then we could say, oh, that's done. But we are part of the information revolution that the printing press started, right? So you get this explosion of information with Gutenberg and the Age of Revolution and kind of the mass production of print that leads to what we will call mass culture, right? But that leads to revolution. And we're still in that, right? Because the things we carry around in our pockets have access to all of the information on the planet in a moment, right? So it's like that is destabilizing. Like we're living through a information revolution, but also this kind of moment of great uncertainty. So it's like that's like the big question that's overarching this, I think, right? So it's like, what did information mean at the time of the American Revolution, and what does that tell us about our time we live in now? I think.
Yeah. So history of the world and
yeah, exactly.
In 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So walk us through what it looks like. I'm going to try to point vaguely, because we're in front of walls here, but in this sort of direction, visitors walk off the elevator and then the room sort of makes a loop, and then from behind me and then to behind you, right?
Right, so the virtual
Right.
tour, as it were.
Right.
So you come off the elevator and you're in a section in which we're doing, and I'm gonna give kind of like the broad stroke, right? Because ultimately I want people to come and see the actual thing. Okay, so when you come off the elevator, you're confronted with kind of several routes you can take, but the way I think makes the most sense is you hit this first wall, which is two things happening on it, which is
So this is the one next to you here?
no, the one over there.
Okay.
Which is there are all of these pieces of technology, right? Like typewriters, laptops, a microfilm machine, calculators, telegraphs, telephones, all this stuff. And the point is, like, all of those things, like all of these information things are now in our pocket on the phone, right? All these things do that work, and now we carry them around in our pocket. The other thing that's joining them, right, is that availability of something in your pocket that means things, information moves around instantly, right? You can text someone on the other side of the world and they can text you back. I'm comparing that to a letter from our collection from the 1890, where a woman named Bobby Ewell, this is like one of my favorite things we have. She writes a letter to her brother, Robert Trail, who's a Revolutionary War, is a big deal in Northampton County during the American Revolution. And she writes him a letter that basically the extent of the letter is part one is guilting him that he hasn't written back to her.
Yeah.
That goes on for longer than you expect it to. And then there is a explanation, and I think this also is by way of guilting, of what happens when she sends a letter. Because he's over here in Easton and she lives in the Orkneys in northern Scotland, like all the way up there. And she gives this like explanation of like, when I write a letter, this is how I get it to you in Easton. And it's like all the various intermediaries. So we have that with a choose your own adventure game where people can try to get a letter from the Orkneys here. The wall directly behind us that our lovely colleague Emma is doing some finishing touches on. Hi, Emma. Is detailing the Declaration of Independence, right? Famously for us, the Declaration of Independence is read here in Easton, one of three places simultaneously. That's Trenton, Philadelphia, and Easton, where the Declaration is read aloud for the first time. That wall shows us what we know and what we don't know. The short of it is we know not a lot. We know what was read here on this particular day, and we know that it was treason to do that. Other than that, we don't really know much. We don't know how it got here. We don't know who read it. We don't know for sure who's in the audience. Really, the only documentary evidence we have the Declaration is read here is like one account in a newspaper. So we were talking about that in this kind of this moment that we commemorate every year at Heritage Day. Further on down here is a comparison of the English language version and the German language version of the Declaration of Independence. Of course, Pennsylvania, and this part of Pennsylvania particularly, was heavily filled with German speakers. And the Declaration was translated into German very early, before like the Dunlop broadside is broadly available. The Declaration exists in German. And in fact, a German language newspaper is the first media source that breaks the news that the Declaration has happened. So kind of talking about that as this like German moment of of independence and kind of what that means. In the case to the left of you, we have a variety of things that an 18th century printer would print, ranging anywhere from a exceptionally large Bible, like a paving block of a Bible, to blank forms, including a form signed by Benjamin Franklin, money, the idea of printers printing currency, essentially the sort of like paper things that you're going to be touching if you're a printer. Of course, that is because as we're kind of sitting in here, we have a, somewhat replica of an 18th century print shop with a replica of an 18th century Franklin press that's behind me here, on loan from a gentleman named Frank Sattler. who is a printer that is connected to the National Museum of Industrial History in Bethlehem.
okay.
So that is that press behind me. We have things where people can set type and things where people can try to like find errors in a text.
Okay.
Both of those like essential jobs of a printer. When you leave the print shop, there is a working model of a early 20th century Chandler and Price jobbing press, which is the small kind of press that you print like business cards on. So that's out there as well. Then there is a section on like the press and violence. So that ranging anywhere from reports of violence on the quote unquote frontier, including the massacre in Wyoming, this event that leads to the Sullivan campaign. And then this idea of like what it means that we call the massacre at Wyoming, and the Sullivan campaign, the Sullivan campaign. Partly it's because of who is doing the violence, right? Massacre at Wyoming is a attack on settlers by indigenous groups. The Sullivan campaign is functionally a genocide done by the American government. So we have that. There's a section on runaway ads, which were part of newspapers for enslaved people who had run away for their enslavers to place an ad wanting them to be found. This also includes people putting ads in newspapers for the sale of enslaved people. Functionally, what this is saying is that printers were heavily implicated in a slave trade. Right, because they are saying like, person for sale, inquire at the printer, right? The printer is functioning as an intermediary there. Paired in there as well is the 1780 Register of Enslaved People. This document we've been using that shows the realities of enslavement here in the county at really a snapshot of a moment, which is the fall of 1780. Once you've gone through that, then you're in a section that is a 1960s living room. We are using a deep fake that was created by a group connected to MIT that is called In Event of Moon Disaster. That is a deep fake of Richard Nixon giving the speech he would have given if that Apollo 11 astronauts died on the moon. That is in a living room, and the kind of goal here is to educate the public about the realities of deepfake, right? Because if we're thinking about like what is something that is a major information problem in the modern era, it is that you can create videos that are not real, right? And of course, like Nixon never actually gives that speech because they make it famously home, right? So after you're through that section, then it is kind of the implications, because that really, the deep fake introduces the idea of misinformation into this exhibit, I think, right? And after that is the idea of what are different kinds of misinformation people encounter, or what are the implications of it. So there's a nod that like photographic manipulation has existed as long as we've had photographs, right? But like, you should never trust a photograph as long as there's been photography, because they've always been fake. There is a section about the Satanic Panic, this moral panic of the 80s and 90s related to a wide variety of things, but which we're showing connected to Dungeons and Dragons and a tarot deck, a Miss Cleo tarot deck, might I add. We have a section on public health, which is, of course, a major information and misinformation site. We're comparing George Washington's order for the general inoculation related to smallpox with a COVID-19 vaccine vial, kind of showing this stretch across time. And then we have a section about elections and misinformation. Notably, in 1799, a Easton newspaper printer, Longcope, publishes a story in the run-up to the gubernatorial election that there was a epidemic illness in Easton. He publishes a retraction the next day because there wasn't an epidemic in Easton. And what he was doing is because at that time, if you were voting, Northampton County is large, right? And if you're voting, you had to travel to Easton to put your ballot in the box, which, by the way, we have a ballot, like one of the earliest ballot boxes from the county there on display as well. So you had to come to the county seat to vote.
Mhm.
And people might not want to if there is an epidemic illness going on.
Oh.
So it goes to what people accused him of at the time, and what seems to be the case, is that he's trying to suppress vote leading in Northampton County leading up to the gubernatorial election. Then we have a section kind of coming off of that about public media through our sponsors for Lehigh Valley 250, PBS 39. So we have a section about the importance of public media, and we have, because we're collecting up to the present, we have a copy of the last print issue of the Easton Express, published this year on February 2nd. Ultimately saying, that one of the essential drivers of democracy and information is a free press, but also a local press, right, that deals with these local stories as well. So that is the read this in a nutshell, I suppose.
Quite a nutshell.
Quite a nutshell.
Quite a nutshell. There's a lot, like when I was first reading over your outline of everything. The phrase that you use like repeatedly, but the one that I think that really stuck with me through the whole thing was the information revolution. A catchy as hell phrase, but there are two time periods that I know you're thinking of when you were putting that into the exhibit.
Right.
Time periods that are different in some ways and yet not at all different in other ways.
Right.
Why do they matter so much? Those two eras.
I think they matter so much because, so I think you're talking about.
First of all, what are the eras? Sorry,
if I'm guessing what you. It is the time of the American Revolution, so the end of the 18th century and the early, let's say, Revolution to early Republic, probably is probably a thing there. And today, right? I think, right? Both of those are information revolutions, right? So I think one of the most important things to think of with the American Revolution is that we, as people who didn't live through it, and here I'm assuming none of our listeners and we aren't like, beings that have lived endlessly, right? Like people that didn't live through this, we know what happens, right? We have historical hindsight. We know that when they're reading that declaration in Center Square on July 8th, 1776, we know what the outcome's going to be, right? Like we know what's going to happen through the war. We know that that'll lead to like us sitting here in Easton in the United States of America, not a colony of Great Britain, right? But when people are living through that, they don't have that hindsight, right? That hearing that declaration read, that is earth shattering.
Yeah.
That's like an unprecedented moment in your life, right? Like you don't know what that's going to mean. In every time, every like possible outcome of that revolution, many of them are that we lose, right? It's like we're up against like against one of the largest empires on the planet at the time, right? So it's like I think what's very important if we're thinking about the information revolution and the American Revolution is the uncertainty of it, is the terror of it, as I think there was to, right, like all this stuff, right? Mass media.
All right, we're going to try that again. If I can. Oh no, we're still recording. I was looking for a record button.
Are we still recording?
Sorry, yeah, the whole thing shut down on me for a second, so.
I'm going to answer that question again.
Continue.
Maybe I can answer the question again, maybe tighter.
Okay. All right, yep, Howard says it's working now.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So what I was talking about then was this information revolution then and now, the time of the American Revolution and today, right? And I think there is people living in the American Revolution were living through uncertainty. They didn't know the outcome. They were also living in what functionally was this like vast media ecosystem. Like we don't think about that, but there's broadsides, there's print, there's newspapers, there's There's books, there's pamphlets, there's all this information moving around, right? And like some of those things are like and ranging anywhere from like the Dunlop broadside to like British responses to the Declaration to like rumors of war. And then of course like there's letters going on, right? So it's like functionally that time, yeah, the technology is different, but it's functioning very similar to our world today. A thing I've been thinking about a lot as we're doing this is like, you take someone like probably one of the most savvy printers and kind of intellectuals of his time, Benjamin Franklin, right? Who's kind of like a specter in this exhibit, really. You plunk him in the modern world, and there's going to be stuff I think he's surprised about, but I think that he's going to kind of understand what's going on very quickly. Right. He's going to understand how media works. He's going to kind of understand the media landscape. He's going to understand like the role of misinformation in our world. Right. So it's vitally important, I think, that because we talk about how like, history repeats or history rhymes is what I usually prefer. Right. But like the revolution can tell us a lot about like our media consumptive habits, right? Like, because those people that were like reading those broadsides and writing about stuff and sending like guilt letters to their brothers, or like writing pamphlets, or like writing these like things against the British government, like they were interacting with media in functionally the same way we do. Not technically the same way we do, but functionally the same way we do. And I think it's important to talk about that because when you think about the revolution, you can often like, it becomes this like sacred and static thing that gets like mythologized and gets like part of like the national myth, right? But it's like very important that like as a historian and as an American, you look at it how it was for people who were living it, right? You have to think about the implications of it, I think, and kind of what that means for us today. But like it's vitally important you think about what that was like when it was happening. Right. And the answer is it's very messy. It's very messy. Yeah. So it was very, I think there's a lot of it that would feel very familiar to us in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a couple things that I'm fascinated by, like actual tangible artifacts that we have. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are on some of like the big pieces of, I want to say pieces of misinformation, but the physical, tangible pieces of misinformation. Like, what are some of your favorite pinpoints?
Things that are here.
Yeah. Things that we have.
So misinformation wise, there's a fascinating moment. It's actually not print, it's a letter. And it's in a case over here because it's about military orders. And it is the guy I don't know if I've talked about him on here, and I'd be shocked if I haven't. Robert Levers. The county parliamentarian.
This is new information.
I know, but he writes a letter. And what he's doing, I'm fascinated with him as a historical figure because he writes excessively, and he's very transparent. He doesn't, I don't think he thinks he is like, and I'm saying this like as a historian, like I think he thinks people don't realize how transparent he is, but he's very transparent because he's writing all of these letters to like various powerful people saying like, I saw this thing, or this bad thing is happening, or this person did something suspicious. But what he does in here, there's this letter we have, and it's part of our collection, where he writes this letter to someone, and he's like heard military orders, and he's like, I don't agree with these military orders. Therefore, I think this guy is an imposter. And he like goes on about why he's an imposter. And it's wild. Like it's wild. It's this wild moment. And like it's kind of like, I mean, there's like what is Robert Liebers playing at any kind of any moment. But like it is this fascinating document, right? Because it's like you see this kind of like almost like moment of someone like crashing out, as it were, right? Like what do we do with this kind of information? So that is my kind of little favorite eye. The long coat one, that's this kind of great moment of a election related misinformation in Northampton County in the 18th century. And it's very like he publishes this retraction, but like I think it's very clear he's trying to, and we know he was for the gubernatorial candidate that was unlikely to win Northampton County. So he's trying to like get less people to vote. So that it's very fascinating. So that's this kind of interesting little moment. And then like I think like a moment that kind of pokes it out into the present that like the Satanic Panic reminder, right? Because I think like the Satanic Panic, there was this kind of like great evil about like kids playing D&D or like uh what was going on if I or like Halloween candy or like all these things, right? And it's like ultimately this was just like there's not very much like actual tangible evidence that anything was going on, which is kind of like media, like a media circus about it, right? That kind of got like really blown up. And then that of course leads to like people checking Halloween candy forevermore, even though there's no real documented evidence of like tampering of Halloween candy, really, I don't think. So it's like really, I think that moment that like these kind of modern day media witch hunts like that can happen are vitally important, right, to be reminded of. And of course, like the deep fake, I think is like a good hallmark there for us.
I remember when you made me watch it the first time, and I was like, if I didn't know what I was looking for, I would have completely missed all of it.
It's better on an old TV.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's see if we can. All right. I do want to mention too that we have a program coming up on Saturday, October 11th. That will be an eyewitness account of the last days of the newspaper in Easton, PA. This is from a local Estonian, Al Kratzer, who is a cartoonist, creative director, and a publisher who was kind of on the inside when the print editions really started to like fade out of existence. So he's gonna walk us through like what that looked like on the back end.
Sure.
So that will be Saturday, October 11th at 1 p.m. Any other major things that we want to point out? Oh, actually, yeah, I didn't write this down, but now that I'm sitting amidst all of these text panels, we talked about it with Warehouse Valley 2, that this is now the second exhibit that is bilingual in English and in Spanish.
Yes, it is.
And a whole lot to unpack there about information.
Absolutely.
And accessibility.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's like, of course, Northampton County during the American Revolution was at least bilingual, if not like more lingual than that, right? So it's like, that's a long-standing truth of the region in which we live.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's important. Another thing to note too, for long-standing viewers of us, there are several there's several things that we've talked about that are also in here as well. So Lucretia Bradley of balloon fame makes an appearance here.
Not for the balloon.
Less for balloon. Balloon is very much like and she did a balloon, but for her foray into phrenology, you know, that's in with the public health stuff, you know, the head bump reading. And also here is
I'm not laughing. This was so serious back then.
This is very serious. Also here is Ted Pierce.
Yes.
I put the Nuremberg transcripts are in here as well, because if we're thinking of like information and the power of information, like one of the most important and vital things that information does is preserve the historical record, particularly preserve the historical record regarding historical atrocities, right? Like the Nuremberg transcript does. So they're in here as well. Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with, you know, my longstanding fascination with the Titanic disaster going down that road.
I do the Titanic. I mean, same. I've been into the Titanic since like I guess this is before the movie, Sarah. This is before the movie. And we have, I didn't mention this because this is a good local misinformation thing. So the Titanic hits the iceberg on April 14th, 1912, and then sinks on the very early April 15th. And the newspaper in the Eastern Express for the morning of April 15th, 1912, and many other newspapers, but the Express says that the Titanic hit an iceberg.
Mhm.
Leviathan, it's like Leviathan strikes iceberg because that's what you have to say. It's a big thing.
We gotta get somebody to buy
Gotta say that, right?
Yeah.
So, but it hits iceberg, true. But then it says, it's being, everything's fine. It's being towed to Nova Scotia. Everyone's been taken off of it. And then it lists like all the people in it, like like Benjamin Guggenheim and John Jacob Astor and like all these like richest people in the world. And like, oh, they've been taken off the boat and everything's fine. And then they have like a representative from the White Star Line saying, like, well, it's unsinkable, so like it didn't sink, but famously not. And like what's kind of important there too, it's which this comes up in a different part of the exhibit, developing stories change so much, right? Like I think we see that very often in our modern world with that like whenever a major news story occurs, people tweet or thread or whatever people do now, excrete, whatever you do on X, they post what's happening, sometimes live while they're there, right? They're witnessing something, they're posting it. But like live eyewitness, firsthand, immediate accounts are valuable, but they lack context. They lack like the broader narrative. They're filled sometimes with rumor, right? So it's like very often, like if you want to actually know what's happening, you need to like wait for an actual like piece of journalism to be done on it. All right. So it's like that like Titanic story, like that's happening in 1912, but that happens kind of over and over again.
And I didn't make the connection really until just now, but the Titanic piece is kind of next to this big wall that you can't really see it from where I'm pointing, but it's like how to spot misinformation.
Yeah.
Very important, very, very fascinating, because I'm sitting here going, what was your source for that Titanic piece though? Did you talk to anybody perchance? Did you
talk to anyone on the Titanic?
Might be a little difficult to do as they are still in the ocean.
Right.
Yeah, but that and the Nixon piece is just like every day that passes, we're just like, oh boy, that hits a little.
And why I like the Nixon one, I really like it, right? If anything, I mean, it's like really fun as a curator to do like a 1960s living room, right? But it's like what the Nixon piece does really well is it is a like historical moment that like everyone knows didn't happen, right? Like it is like here is something that absolutely did
very famously came off of the moon.
Yes. Yeah, they didn't. Neil Armstrong did not die on the moon.
We did in fact go to the moon.
We did in fact go to the moon, and nobody died at the moon. Yes, but it is the speech he would have given if they didn't. But
I could go so many places with this, and
I know, but it's been this has been a fun one, I'll say.
It has. It's been fun to see you like kind of flexing, like creatively flexing in it, and then you'll be like, you're never gonna guess what I found, and like, oh no, is this absolutely tragic and horrifying? Yeah, but
I know, yeah. There's a lot of things like that.
Well, that's the field that we went into, so.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions for us? Thank you for all being so patient, as always, in our myriad of technology problems.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out someday. We're also like doing it from a different place, so.
Yeah, I like this though. The lighting's really good here. All right. So this is actually our, as we said, last conversation of the year. This will be posted up on YouTube, and please, I will make another plug as well. Tomorrow night, this exhibit opens from 4 to 7 p.m. So all of y'all lovely members are invited. If you are not a member yet, what you doing? You can come hang out with all the cool kids and talk about misinformation.
A great time to become a member.
Yeah, it was always a good time to become a member, but especially now with all of these exciting things happening before and in preparation for 2026. So you can check out how to support us at civilmuseum.org/support. So you can, of course, become a member or donate or sponsor an artifact or a program or come to our events and see what we're all about and have a good laugh and maybe learn something.
Talk to us about these things at our events.
Yes, yes, we all like to talk about what we do. We like to nerd out with folks.
We do.
So, great, thank you again, everyone, and we will see y'all. We'll see you tomorrow for the opening of the exhibit. We'll see you on YouTube when this goes live, and we'll see you as we keep prepping for 2026.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.